Americans consume nearly 200 million pounds of mustard every year, enough to coat every ballpark hot dog from coast to coast, with plenty left for backyard grills. That's because mustard feels like home. It's sharp yet comforting, simple yet full of memory, the kind of flavor that brightens a sandwich and adds a spark of honesty to every meal. You'll find it everywhere in squeeze bottles at food trucks, brushed over steakhouse burgers, or dotted across plates in fine dining restaurants. No matter the setting, mustard has always carried the same promise, but peel back the label and the story shifts. Many honey mustards pour in high fructose corn syrup instead of honey. Some Dijons rely on sulfites to last longer. Others use titanium dioxide to fake that golden hue. Each small compromise dulls the taste and the truth of what this condiment once was. We all want to bring the best to our families, even in the smallest jar. So today, let's uncover 5 mustard brands to avoid, and 2 that still honor the original recipe. Stay until the end. You might just rethink your mustard shelf. Worst Heinz Honey Mustard. Heinz Honey Mustard has long been the people's favorite. The yellow packet beside every drive-through bag, the familiar squeeze at barbecues, the safe pick for kids' chicken nuggets. It feels trustworthy because it's everywhere, and because the brand behind it wants to find the word family. At first glance, there's nothing alarming. The color is rich, the texture creamy, and the flavor balanced between tang and sweet. But the sweetness hides a quiet switch. On the ingredient line, high fructose corn syrup shows up before honey does, followed by sugar-modified cornstarch caramel color and sodium benzoate. That's not a condiment, it's a chemistry set engineered for uniformity, not flavor. However, this wasn't an accident. In industrial production, honey is unstable. Its viscosity and flavor vary with every batch, and it costs far more than corn syrup. By replacing real honey with laboratory sugar, Heinz solved 2 problems: cost and consistency. Each squeeze would taste identical, last longer, and resist separation on shelves or in hot warehouses. But the price of that perfection is subtle, and it's paid not by the company but by the consumer's body. High fructose corn syrup digests differently from natural sugars. It spikes blood glucose faster, encourages fat storage in the liver, and numbs taste receptors over time. You end up wanting more sweetness to feel the same satisfaction. It's not poison, it's conditioning. The more we eat, the less we taste. Behind that, sodium benzoate plays the role of quiet guardian, preventing spoilage and storage. Yet when it meets vitamin C found naturally in foods served with mustard, it can form small amounts of benzene, a compound the World Health Organization classifies as carcinogenic. In trace doses, it's legal. In daily habits, it's cumulative. What's worse, the color that makes Heinz Honey Mustard look warm isn't from turmeric at all. It's caramel color, produced by heating sugars under ammonia. This process creates substances called 4-MeI compounds, which the state of California lists for potential cancer risk labeling. Again, the exposure is minimal, but the irony remains: a product built to look wholesome depends on chemistry that doesn't belong in something called honey. For millions of Americans, this bottle represents reliability. But reliability isn't always honesty. We trusted the name, not the formula. Each squeeze carries a small lesson in modern food marketing: that familiarity can mask compromise and sweetness can disguise substitution. Let that sink in for a second. When something as humble as mustard turns this complicated, it isn't just about one brand. It's about how an industry redefined flavor into flavored. It's about how shelf life quietly outran real life. And it's about how somewhere between the fields and the factory, the simple taste of honey got lost in translation. Heinz didn't set out to deceive. It set out to dominate a market. But in chasing uniform perfection, it flattened the very essence of what made mustard worth loving: that sharp, unpredictable honesty of real seeds, vinegar, and spice. Sweetness replaced substance, and nobody blinked. 2 Ken Steakhouse Honey Mustard. You recognize this jar, right? Yes, I know. I used to like it too, right beside Heinz, sitting proudly in the fridge door. That thick, creamy gold felt richer, somehow more restaurant style. But recently I found out what gives it that staying power, and it's not just good blending. Ken's Steakhouse Honey Mustard was born from the same idea that built American dining in the 70s: big flavor, long shelf life, and consistency across every table. It's the taste of steakhouse comfort bottled for convenience. The problem is, comfort and convenience rarely share the same conscience. The flavor begins smooth and slightly buttery, the tang arriving late like a polite guest. You can almost smell the grilled chicken and warm rolls that go with it. But turn the bottle around and the illusion cracks. The sweetness isn't from honey alone. High fructose corn syrup appears again, followed by sugar vegetable oil, and a stabilizer called propylene glycol alginate, more common in salad dressings than in mustard. The list ends with calcium disodium EDTA, a preservative used to stop oils from turning rancid. Still, none of these are illegal. They're deliberate. In the world of large-scale food production, texture is everything. The alginate gives Ken's that slow, almost velvety cling. The EDTA makes sure it stays that way for months. In a refrigerated bottle, that stability feels like quality, thick, creamy, reliable. But what we perceive as freshness is really controlled decay. Every additive freezes time just long enough for the product to survive warehouse heat truck vibration and weeks on retail shelves without losing shape. Meanwhile, something subtler happens to flavor itself. When a condiment is designed to never change, it stops evolving. The sharp edge of mustard seed, that quick sting at the back of the throat, is softened until it becomes more like a dressing than a spice. It's the culinary equivalent of elevator music, smooth, predictable, and impossible to offend. Because of that, Ken's represents more than a single recipe. It represents a philosophy that people crave familiarity more than authenticity. That a product which never goes bad feels safer than one that might separate or darken with time. And that logic works. Millions buy it, pour it, and trust it. Yet under that comfort lies a quiet trade-off. Preservatives protect the product, not the eater. Calcium disodium. EDTA binds metal ions to prevent oxidation, but it also binds trace minerals in your body like iron and zinc when consumed regularly. The FDA says it's safe in small amounts, but few consumers measure small amounts over decades. The result isn't immediate harm, but gradual fatigue, flavor fatigue, metabolic fatigue, even curiosity fatigue. When food stays perfect too long, our expectations forget what real imperfection tastes like. In the end, Ken's is a masterclass in modern marketing, a sauce that feels homemade but lives a corporate lifespan. It's thick, it's stable, it's profitable, and it's proof that preservation has quietly replaced purity as the food industry's moral compass. It lasts longer but tastes less alive. 3. French's honey mustard dipping sauce. When did French's stop being French? When did that bright yellow bottle, once a symbol of backyard barbecues and childhood picnics, start looking more like marketing than mustard? We all grew up trusting this brand. It felt American in the best way, simple, honest, dependable. But the French's honey mustard dipping sauce isn't the same mustard most of us remember. This version was built not for flavor, but for visibility, engineered to shine under fluorescent lights, to glow just enough on a supermarket shelf, and to look the same in every restaurant pump across the country. The wrong starts right there in the color itself. That sunny hue doesn't come from turmeric or mustard seeds. It's crafted with titanium dioxide, an industrial whitening agent also used in paint, sunscreens, and processed snacks. The FDA still allows it in trace amounts, but Europe banned it in foods in 2022, citing concerns about cell damage and accumulation over time. It's not an instant poison, but it doesn't belong in your lunch either. Then there's sodium benzoate, the silent stabilizer. It keeps the product safe from mold and bacteria, but under certain conditions, especially when mixed with vitamin C or light exposure, it can form benzene, a known carcinogen. Again, the risk is small per serving. The problem is frequency. When something sits in your fridge for months and gets used daily, small risks multiply quietly. So why does French's keep using them? Because the system almost demands it. That color consistency, the one that looks fresh, is tied to the brand's visual identity. Every bottle, packet, and dipping cup must match a precise shade code defined years ago. Changing that tone even slightly could alter how customers feel about the product. Studies show shoppers instinctively link brighter colors to cleaner, safer foods. In other words, color sells trust even when it's chemically built. The factory process follows the same logic. The mustard isn't ground in small batches. It's mixed in massive stainless steel tanks with controlled pH, then homogenized to maintain smoothness under varying temperatures. Titanium dioxide isn't there for flavor. It's there for optical reliability. Each drop looks camera perfect, whether poured in a commercial ad or onto a cafeteria tray. And there lies the bigger truth. French's didn't color it to deceive, it colored it to survive. In a market obsessed with visual uniformity, brands can't afford natural variance. The sauce must stay bright, stable, photogenic, and identical across millions of units. It's not corruption, it's adaptation. But that adaptation slowly drifts away from what mustard was ever meant to be. If you love this brand, and many of us do, you don't have to abandon it completely. Just look closer. Read the label, skip the dipping sauce line, and go for their classic yellow mustard, which still relies on turmeric instead of titanium. Support the version that proves honesty and color can still coexist. Because in the end, brightness isn't the same as freshness. And the best mustard doesn't need to shine, it just needs to be real. For mal Dijon originale. It used to bite, one customer said. Now it's just yellow paste. There's no anger in that sentence, only nostalgia. The kind of loss you can't quite name, but you taste it the moment you open the jar. Mal Dijon used to feel alive. One small dab on the tongue was enough to jolt the senses, that sting in your nose, that warmth that rolled upward, that clean sharpness cutting through a piece of meat or cheese. It didn't just add flavor, it added spirit. But now the fire is gone. The texture is glossy and thick, the color softer, the scent almost shy. You taste it once and it feels friendly, not fearless. Taste it again and it turns slightly sweet, almost creamy, missing the tension that used to make Dijon Dijon. By the third spoon, the spice no longer rises, it settles. It's polite, predictable, safe. Somewhere between the cellar and the supermarket, the wildness was filtered out. Beneath the label, the change is written in fine print: sodium metabisulfite, a preservative added to protect quality. It prevents color shifts, keeps the mustard bright and uniform, and gives it a longer, more stable life. But in protecting what's seen, it quietly mutes what's felt. Sulfites calm the volatile mustard oils, the compounds that bring heat, aroma, and that nose prickle sensation we remember. When those oils fade, so does the character. The result isn't dangerous, but it's strangely hollow. A Dijon that no longer rushes forward, no longer sings, just hums faintly in the background. For people with sensitivities, sulfites can trigger headaches, tightness, or fatigue, but for everyone else, the harm is simpler: we stop tasting. The body gets used to soft edges, to flavors that never shout. Once Maillet's Dijon told a story of place mustard seeds grown in French soil stone mills, turning slow and heavy workers trusting air and time to do the job. That sharpness wasn't an accident, it was proof of patience. Today, the recipe tells a story of scale stainless tanks, filtered water, global shipping routes, and a flavor calibrated to survive 6 months of travel and another 6 on a shelf. It's the same mustard in Tokyo, Toronto, and Toulouse, and that sameness is both triumph and tragedy. You can't really blame them. To sell millions, a brand must please millions. Heat becomes mild. Bite becomes balance. Authenticity becomes consistency. It's the quiet cost of success to flatten what once made you special so that nobody anywhere feels left out. Still, the memory of the old jar lingers. The one your parents might have used for Sunday roasts, or the one you kept in the fridge door beside real butter and cold pickles. You remember how it used to make your eyes water and your appetite spark, how it turned a plain sandwich into a statement. That was its soul, a small act of honesty in a world of convenience. Now Maillet's Dijon feels like a photograph of itself, pretty polished, and a little too quiet. The flavor doesn't offend, but it doesn't remind you of anything either. And maybe that's the real sadness here: it didn't fail. It simply faded. 5 Roland Dijon, whole grain. Roland Dijon mustard is made by machines that never stop. Industrial grinders crush more than 2 tons of seeds every hour, generating heat that scorches the very oils responsible for mustard's sting. What should feel bright and sharp turns quiet before the batch even cools. In production terms, that heat is everything. Mustard's flavor depends on a fragile chemical moment when ground seeds meet cold liquid and release volatile compounds. When the temperature rises past that point, those compounds evaporate. The aroma fades, the bite disappears, and what remains is a smooth, safe version of something that used to live. Each stage after that just deepens the silence. The paste moves through homogenizers that even out texture, but squeeze out air. It sits in metal tanks for days, losing whatever spark survived the grind. Then it's pasteurized to guarantee safety, pumped into glass jars and sealed airtight. The result is perfect from a logistical view: stable, uniform, and nearly immortal. From a sensory one, it's lifeless. Roland's Dijon and whole grain varieties show this perfectly. They look artisanal, heavy glass, visible seeds, a label that whispers heritage. But inside, the flavor is trapped in a process too efficient to care. Pasteurization protects it from bacteria, yet kills the heat of the mustard seed. The seeds themselves add texture, not life. Their oils were already lost to friction long before they met the jar. And this isn't a villain story. Roland isn't cutting corners, it's following a system that rewards consistency above all. Supermarkets demand long shelf lives. Distributors need heat resistance for transport. Consumers expect every jar to look identical. To meet all that, manufacturers build an ecosystem where safe equals dull. The longer it lasts, the less it tastes. By the time that jar sits on your kitchen counter, it's already traveled through warehouses lit by LEDs that bleach color and warm air that dries aroma. Its past safety checks, survived heat tests, and waited weeks in boxes before seeing daylight. You twist the lid, smell the mustard, and something feels missing, not wrong, just faint. This isn't just Roland's problem, it's the modern food chain in miniature, a loop that keeps turning until all the sharp edges are worn smooth. Machines make faster, logistics stretch farther, standards tighten, flavors fade. Each step was meant to protect us from spoilage, from inconsistency, from risk. But in doing so, we lost the reason we cared in the first place. So maybe it's time to think beyond the label, beyond the logo, beyond the word Dijon. Maybe the question isn't how to fix one brand, but how to free flavor from the loop that flattens it. Because the real cost of industrial perfection isn't what we pay at the register, it's what we no longer taste. So where do we go from here? If every bottle, every label, every process has fallen into the same mechanical rhythm, what's left for those of us who still care about taste? The truth is, flavor isn't gone. It's just buried under routine. Somewhere beyond the factories and fluorescent lights, a few makers are quietly refusing to play by the same rules. They grind their seeds, cold pack in glass, and keep their batches small enough to taste each one. That's where the story turns. Because progress doesn't have to mean perfection, it can mean returning to what worked. Real mustard still exists, it just hides behind smaller names and simpler shelves. Let's step out of the loop and find the jars that still breathe, the ones made for flavor, not formula. 6 Eden Organic Brown Mustard. Open a jar of Eden Organic Brown Mustard, and it smells like something made by hand, not by machine. The scent is gentle, but a live, tangy apple cider vinegar, earthy mustard seed, and a soft whisper of sea salt. It feels closer to a kitchen than a factory, and that alone changes how you taste it. Unlike most mustards, Eden's formula reads like a short poem: organic mustard seed, organic apple cider vinegar, water, sea salt. Nothing to hide, nothing to translate. There are no stabilizers to keep the paste glossy, no coloring agents to maintain a uniform hue, and no synthetic preservatives to stretch its life beyond reason. What you see and smell is what it really is: mustard in its truest and most humble form. Here's why that matters. Every additive that promises perfection in industrial mustard is also an act of control. It fixes color, locks texture, and freezes flavor in time, but at a cost. Real mustard isn't supposed to stay still. Its aroma changes with temperature, its flavor evolves with air, and its spice deepens as it sits. Eden allows that natural rhythm to exist. Open the jar and it breathes. Stir it and it brightens. Leave it a week and it settles just like food should. Even better, it's packed in glass, not plastic. That might seem small, but glass does what plastic can't. It protects the oils from oxygen and light. No leaching, no lingering taste, no slow photo fade that steals color and character. Each batch is cold-filled to preserve the fragile enzymes that give mustard its bite, the same compounds most commercial heat processing destroys. The result isn't a sharper mustard, but a cleaner one, free from the metallic aftertaste that haunts so many industrial jars. Behind that simplicity is an ethos, not a marketing line. Eden Foods works with small organic farmers who rotate their crops naturally without synthetic fertilizers or genetically modified seed. The company traces its apple cider vinegar back to Midwest orchards where the fruit is fermented in wood, not steel. Even its sea salt is sun-dried, slow, imperfect, but real. In an age obsessed with automation, this kind of patience feels almost radical. And that's what makes Eden's mustard stand out. It doesn't scream health claims or splash slogans across the label. It simply exists honestly. There's no need to shout when the ingredients speak for themselves. You taste the vinegar's brightness, the seed's grounded warmth, and that subtle heat that rises and fades, the kind that reminds you flavor is alive, not engineered. Because real mustard doesn't need to be flawless, it just needs to be truthful. When you spread Eden on bread or mix it into a dressing, you feel a quiet confidence return, that sense of trust lost in all the jars that came before. It's proof that food made with intention still belongs in this world. In the end, Eden organic brown mustard isn't just a condiment, it's a reminder. A reminder that purity doesn't shout, that simplicity isn't weakness, and that honesty, even in something as small as a jar of mustard, still matters. 7 Annie's Organic Dijon Mustard. The first thing you notice isn't the label, it's the aroma. That faint rising sharpness that tickles the back of your nose before you even taste it. Annie's Organic Dijon doesn't wait to impress. It announces itself through scent, not slogans. The smell alone feels clean, direct, and oddly human, like something that could only come from a kitchen where someone still tastes every batch. The flavor follows in layers. A touch of vinegar brightness hits first crisp and clear, not acidic. Then comes the mustard heat, that slow, steady warmth that rolls upward instead of burning. It doesn't sting, it climbs. The sharpness lands softly, then lingers, just enough to remind you that this is real Dijon, not a simulation. There's depth, a roundness that feels natural, almost nostalgic. It makes your tongue work, not just register. That sensory honesty comes from restraint. Annie's keeps its recipe as bare as possible: organic vinegar, water, mustard seed, sea salt, clove. No preservatives, no sulfites, no stabilizers to protect what doesn't need protection. Because when the ingredients are fresh and clean, they don't need guarding, they speak for themselves. The vinegar carries a whisper of fruit from its fermentation. The mustard seed brings quiet fire, and the salt steadies it all like punctuation. Most mustards chase perfection through control. Annie's does the opposite. Each batch is ground slowly and filled cold, letting the natural oils keep their bite. The enzymes stay alive, the heat stays honest. That's why the first taste feels like it's still moving, as if the mustard itself is breathing, expanding across your palate. You can almost feel it pulse, tang, warmth, calm. Then a pause. Then return. There's a rhythm to this flavor, one that mirrors how good food should behave. It doesn't rush to impress. It unfolds. The first spoonful sharpens you, the second comforts, the third teaches you patience. You realize this isn't the kind of condiment made to shout over other ingredients. It's meant to join them, to make what's already there shine a little brighter. Close your eyes and you can imagine how it's made: small grinders, turning at an unhurried pace, air cool, the smell of vinegar and spice mixing like a warm draft in the room. It's not nostalgic for the sake of romance. It's nostalgic because the flavor feels familiar, even if you've never tasted it before. The kind of familiarity that reminds you what food used to mean, not processed, not preserved, just present. There's honesty in that taste, a directness we've almost forgotten how to appreciate. It doesn't try to convince you it's healthy. It doesn't have to. You can taste the clarity, the lack of residue, the way it finishes clean, and leaves space for the next bite. You taste confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything. And that's the quiet strength of Annie's. It isn't trying to win attention, it's trying to earn trust. Every jar carries the same message without saying a word, that integrity itself can be an ingredient. And simplicity is still a kind of courage. The longer you eat it, the more you understand flavor doesn't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes the truest things in food whisper the loudest. After all these jars and labels, one truth stands out: real flavor doesn't shout, it stays. The best mustard isn't the one that burns the tongue or glows the brightest. It's the one that feels alive, honest, and human. The kind that reminds you food was never meant to be flawless, just real. So next time you reach for a bottle, take a second look. Read the label, notice what's left out as much as what's written in. Choose the jar that breathes, that changes, that feels like it came from a place, not a plant. Because purity isn't old-fashioned. It's the quiet form of progress, the one that gives you control again. Eat slower, question more. And remember, when you know what's behind the flavor, you're not just buying mustard anymore. You're choosing honesty on your plate.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.